I chair an independent panel which since the end of 2020 has been advocating for a global public health convention. This is a very important moment in the work to deliver a pandemic accord and the amendments to IHR and a UN General Assembly political declaration. And that, of course, is quite a lot of work to bring off. And we have just the 1 year until we reach the World Health Assembly next year, when we should be completing all of this. I would say that all our people across the world actually deserve to have the treaty and other matters in hand then, so that we can really make progress.
Hello everybody, welcome to Appointed to Promote Television, where I'm here to provide for you the latest in current events, Bible prophecy, and Bible teaching, all while serving our main mission of the day, which is promoting the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as always, I'm your host, Ed Walsh, happy to have each and every one of you here with me today for what is going to be my 68th episode of ATP, and as well as my latest Bible prophecy update, of which we are going to cover one of the most important happenings going on in our world today, despite the fact that 95% of the world does not even know it's happening. Of which today's episode's title and topic is the following: the 76th Annual World Health Assembly Recap, Medical Health Freedom or Total Global Control. And that's what we will cover today, with a recap of the recently concluded 76th Annual World Health Assembly, which took place in Geneva, Switzerland from May 21st until May 30th, 2023. And it is here where we will let you know where things sit as it relates to the medical sovereignty of the world after the summit, and the work that yet still lies ahead for the World Health Organization to claim power on a scale on which no international body has ever been provided with. It was delegates from all 194 member states who came to discuss, among other things, the controversial planned amendments to the international health regulations in this so-called Pandemic Treaty or Accord, where again, if passed, these guidelines will strip all nations of their medical sovereignty and give the WHO total control for the implementation of a medical emergency for any reason at any time. And so as we go through this episode today about these evil global elites who just want to rule the entire world, what is it that God says about such people? Well, I'm sure you've heard it before, and it comes to us from the book of Proverbs. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. And my fellow viewers out there, these are exactly the kinds of people we'll be covering today. And to those who know and follow Jesus Christ and the prophecies of his word, we can see this being one of the earliest major dominoes, leading us to an eventual one world governmental system which will ultimately be ruled by a one world governmental leader known as the Antichrist. So what I'd like to do for you right now is provide for you a bit of a timeline of which the WHO has been seeking this medical sovereignty back to last year's 2022 World Health Assembly, in which they nearly succeeded then in implementing this treaty/accord, but fell short by one member nation. Now, it was this year's WHO Assembly which brought forth and continued the negotiations on the amendments towards a global pandemic treaty, which now looks to be finalized and put to a vote 1 year from now at the 77th Annual World Health Assembly in May of 2024, according to the WHO's own timeline. As for the pandemic treaty itself, well, it needs only 2/3 of the majority of its member states to pass. And if it does pass, of which it is expected to next year, member states will then have a 10-month window of opportunity to reject such amendments. And if they do not, the new regulations will take effect in May of 2025 during the 78th Annual World Health Assembly. And where it would be at that time that we all would fall under the rule and reign of the World Health Organization, again on a global scale under what would be known as Article 19. Now, the most disturbing thing here is that unlike the lawmaking process in democratic nations, the WHO process would allow for a small number of global representatives or elites, often being unelected diplomats, to impose the international laws upon all of the WHO's 194 member states. And so now, let me provide for you a summary at just some of the international health regulation amendments as they are currently drafted, and of which these amendments would be the following. Let us begin with number 1 of 6, which is to expand the definitions of pandemics and health emergencies. Specifically, this introduces just even the potential for harm rather than something that actually provides harm itself. And all this so that the WHO can mandate lockdowns or medical interventions based on even just the mere suspicion of any global threat that could do the public harm. Number 2, to change the recommendations of the WHO from non-binding to mandatory. So this means that no longer would the WHO simply be a body that simply makes health recommendations, but rather one that enforces them, of which, again, all member states must follow, implement, and be compliant with the WHO's recommendations. Moving on to number 3, set up extensive surveillance apparatuses in all member states. And folks, how creepy is that? I mean, can you say minority style? And moving on to number 4, to enable the WHO to share country data without consent. So much for medical sovereignty. Number 5, to force, get a load of that, force national support for censorship activities as directed by the WHO. And why would we be surprised, folks, to hear this? For censoring always takes place when totalitarianism arrives. And lastly and finally, the most hideous and heinous for my money being number 6. To solidify the Director General's ability, get a load of this, to independently and single-handedly declare health emergencies. And you heard that right, folks, and I don't know what you think, but that sounds completely chilling to me for putting things solely into the hands of one man. And in this case, the highly suspect, Mr. Tedros. And again, for an expose on his background as well as his history, again, check out my 65th episode available on Rumble. So folks, this is neither a sci-fi or a horror movie, but rather it's real life. Playing out for us exactly as how God has told us through the pages and the prophecies of his very own word. And friends, there are many things as a result of this treaty when passed and ratified that will affect the soul of every single living person walking upon this earth today. And out of all of these amendments we've heard, the most dangerous of which will be setting up a governing body under oversight of the WHO to control the whole health emergency process. This means that the WHO's power would expand exponentially, of which this treaty or accord, whichever you prefer, tells us that they will have total control over a broad range of all aspects of life and the environment that can impact health, and therefore fall under even just the potential to cause harm, let alone when harm has already been caused. So my friends, if this continues to move on towards our 2025 ultimate fulfillment, it would be the WHO that would have the power to set up extensive surveillance apparatuses such as a global health passport, the mandating of medical interventions such as vaccines for every person upon the planet, and don't forget about travel restrictions, quarantines, and yes, even climate lockdowns, all for the sake of saving Mother Earth, which, my friends, would likely become commonplace. So my fellow viewers out there, what do you think about the WHO's push for medical sovereignty? And do you believe that this will see itself to fruition in 2025, thus pushing us to the beginning of our first one world governmental system? So do me a favor and please leave your comments in the comments section, for I'd love to hear your thoughts. And my friends, what is happening here today is pure evil to the core. And just as I touted what God hates at the top of the program today, exactly how does God want us as believers to deal with evil? And for that, I hope to give you some encouragement by providing you a bit of God's wisdom and promises that He delivers to us through His Word, of which He tells us in these following scriptures. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. In the book of Romans, let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. In Psalms chapter 97, O you who love the Lord, hate evil. He preserves the lives of His saints. He delivers them from the hand of the wicked. And it is the Lord, my friend, who ultimately reminds us from the book of Romans, Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So my friends, take these great promises and encouragement from our God to heart. And make sure as believers that you are being as effectual and as God-honoring as you can in promoting the gospel to any person who will dare to listen. And for those of you who may be watching today and don't know Jesus, my question is, why do you not see the need for Jesus? And to help define that for you further, take a look at the 10 Commandments, which you now see before you, which is otherwise known as God's moral law. Examine these 10 scriptures and say to yourself, have I broken any of these commandments at any point in my life? And my friends, if you were to just break one of those commandments one time per day and live for the average life expectancy of 75 years, you would die with 27,375 sins upon your person that you will have to give an account to a just, righteous, and holy God who does not tolerate any sin. But that, my friends, is why God gave us Jesus, who humbled Himself by coming to the earth as a man to preach the good news of Him being the only way to salvation, of which He ultimately died upon the cross in your place for the redemption of your sins, and then rose again on the third day from the dead, of which He now sits at the right hand of the throne of God to be the intercessor for anyone who has put their trust in Him. Therefore, my friends, admit you're a sinner, believe Jesus is Lord, and call upon His name, and thus you will be entered into the Lamb's Book of Life, enjoying Jesus Christ personally in eternity in the house of God as a child of God. So as I always say, my friends, do not delay and receive Jesus Christ today. So with that said, guys, before we say goodbye today, as always, I'm going to give you a preview for our next upcoming episode of the program, which is going to be our second and final part in our two-part series about Christian apostasy. But our second part of the series is going to fixate on the Christian music scene, of which our 69th episode will be titled End Times Apostasy, the Christian Music Deception, Bethel Hillsong Elevation Worship, and more exposed. So my friends, I can assure you, you will not want to miss this most intriguing and exposing episode. So with that said, hey, if you like today's episode, do me the favor, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel to help me get the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ out to the masses. And please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you can stay up to date with all of the latest episodes of Appointed to Promote TV. And so with that said, I will end tonight's program as I do every program with my signature Bible verse and life verse from the book of Colossians chapter 2 verse 8, which simply says, "See to it that you are not held captive by philosophy or empty deception, according to the traditions of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ." So until I see you next time, folks, God bless.